Welcome to Pushback. I'm Aaron Maté. Back in 2013, the Syrian government was accused of committing a chemical attack in the town of Ghouta that killed reportedly hundreds of people. The U.S. media and Congress united around calls for President Obama to bomb Syria because, after all, this alleged chemical attack crossed the red line that Obama had laid down. And it initially seemed that Obama was going to bomb Syria, but then at the last minute, he pulled back, and soon a deal was reached between the U.S., Russia, and Syria to destroy Syria's chemical weapons stockpile. Now, since then, reporting has come out that shows that the U.S. government had evidence that at the same time as it publicly accused Syria of guilt, it privately knew that, in fact, the insurgents around Ghouta had likely launched this attack. According to Seymour Hersh, reporting in the London Review of Books, the British military lab Porton Down found that there was no match between the sarin found in Ghouta and the sarin known to be in the Syrian government arsenal. And there was even intelligence gathered showing that Syrian-based insurgents had obtained sarin and sarin materials from Turkey. Well, now a new study based on open source evidence attempts to resolve the question of what happened. And it concludes pretty decisively that, in fact, contrary to what was publicly claimed, it was indeed Syrian insurgents who are responsible for the sarin attack in Ghouta. I'm joined now by some of the people behind this study: Adam Larson, Michael Kobs, and Saar Wilf. Welcome to Pushback.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so we're going to get into a lot of technical details today that a lot of people are not going to understand. And I will admit that I do not understand fully all the technical details that went into your study, because it requires, I think, a sophisticated understanding of engineering and physics. But I will say this: I have shown your study to people who I trust in the field of physics and engineering, among them Ted Postal, the eminent professor at MIT. And all of them have told me without a doubt that your study is very impressive. One person even speculated to me that this study was so good that it had to have been carried out by a government. But after speaking to people who know you guys, I received many assurances that really there was no government behind this study. So I think it's important to give you a platform to let you lay out what you found, because this story, these allegations in Ghouta, were so important and really almost led to a catastrophic decision in which Obama was going to, launch a serious bombing of Syria that was pulled back relatively last minute. So, Adam, let me start with you. Catch people up on what your study looked at and what the backstory is. Set the stage for us for the study that you conducted into what happened in Ghouta in August 2013.
All right, thanks, Aaron. So now at the on that day, there was actually two fronts of attack alleged or reported in eastern Ghouta to the east of Damascus, and in the western Ghouta, as they call it, to the southwest. We're not really focused on the southwest, the western Ghouta portion. We're in the eastern Ghouta is where the vast majority of the people were reportedly killed. Hundreds. We don't know for sure. In fact, that's part of the mythos of it, is that nobody even knows. It's like Halabja. There was just hundreds. Allegedly over 1,000. Anyway, there were about reportedly 12 rockets of a type called a Volcano. It was an improvised, very large, moderate-sized rocket full of sarin, supposedly. About 12 of these were launched and found in various spots around eastern Ghouta. And what we have done is using other people's work to start with, but a lot of our own over the years. Just careful geolocation of where this impact was, and then the type of damage. And it's not really that tricky, really. If you just look at it carefully, we were able to establish the angles they came from, basically the trajectories, estimated, and take those and work from there.
All right, so give us an example of that. How did you figure out what the angle, for example, of a rocket was, and then what then can you conclude from that about who was responsible for carrying out the attack?
I'd say the best example impact would be the I think it was called Impact Site 4, I believe, off the top of my head, the one that hit a wall in a field. This is the only one in Eastern Ghouta that was used to give a trajectory in the UN OPCW's investigation. They got it grossly wrong by 30 degrees approximately. The way we analyzed it, the best, we've done different methods over the years. People have tried looking at it this way and looking at it that way and estimating differently. Michael had the best analysis, which is to just find a view where you can look straight down the tube, which you're just looking in the direction the rocket traveled in, basically. And it just points to a certain building in the distance. I carefully identify that and trace the line back, measure it on the compass, and it pointed 316 degrees instead of 285. So, it's not very tricky really, but we just, established a little bit of room margin of error based on the small unknowns. That one in particular was quite precise. The others had a larger margin. You couldn't say as much if it was 5 or 10 degrees on a compass this way or that way.
Michael, you want to pick up here, and maybe you can talk about the range of the rockets, because Ted Postal, who I mentioned, who has studied this, he calculated that what was being publicly said by the U.S. government about the range of the rockets was way off, and he calculated a range of about 2 kilometers, and that was very helpful in his view to help determine that in fact the rockets were not fired from Syrian government territory, but in fact from insurgent-controlled territory.
Yeah, this was suspected for a while, and we trusted this calculation because there are also videos that show rockets fly, and you see the impact, and you can get the distance from the sound, and that fits very much with the calculations of Postal and Lloyd, and so we took it as a fact. Yeah, we got these geolocations of the impact points, checked for the most probable angle, and got in the end the trajectories converge at a point. Yeah, and then we took the range of 2 kilometers and 2.5 as an absolute maximum, and yeah, that was basically in the first time it was that. Yeah, we had some area and thought, okay, somewhere here could be a launch point. And yeah, but the what initially started our deeper look in this thing was the wrong UN angle. Yeah, because it was one or the basic fact that was used in all these publications that blamed Assad. And in the end, we had these trajectories, but never looked much deeper than that. So, and it went on for 3 years. We started in 2017. But then Higgins wrote his book and wrote that he confirmed.
And when you say Higgins, you're referring to the infamous Elliot Higgins.
Elliot Higgins, founder of he wrote his book, some autobiography, and wrote that he confirmed that angle. Yeah, and he is self-proclaimed godfather of OSINT, open source investigation or intelligence. Basically confirmed an angle that is 35 degrees wrong. Yeah. And
by the way, Elliot Higgins got it. He didn't confirm it. The footnotes in his book leads to a blog post where he explains how it came from the north rather than the west. He was almost 90 degrees different from what the OPCW angle was. So nothing remotely like a confirmation. He just pointed to a different army base. It basically, can you point to the army? Yes, in a few different ways. And that's what they did over a couple different ways.
And Adam, just explain again how they got how both the UN and Higgins, unsurprisingly, in my opinion, got the angle so wrong.
I don't honestly see any way they could have just tried to get it right and gotten it that wrong. It's so uncanny. This line points straight to the 104th Brigade base in Damascus, and and it had to be in such a way that it converges with the trajectories of the other attack in West Ghouta. It's just 30 degrees wrong, and that's just, it's, as they said in the report, it's a very precise angle, and that's why they used it, but they did not read it very precisely. So I do not know how. Basically, it feels kind of like they just pointed to an army base and drew that line or reported that angle.
And then just explain again and again in a way that's as easily to understand as possible for those of us who are not versed in this, how you believe you got the angle right.
So this is one frame from the UN investigation at that point. Here's the rocket sticking in the ground. And what you see here is when you look straight ahead of the rocket, then you see bright houses and dark houses. So depending on the angle of the sun, these facades are in the sunlight and these are not. And this way we figured out which building it must be. I tried to show it here. Here we have a model, yeah. And when you go and you look, you can look at it from the top. Moment. So here you look all the way down from the impact point. Here's the rocket. Here these facades are in the shadow because the sun comes from the east, from the west at the time, and these are in the sun. So the line is straight to that point, and we measured 136 degrees. You know, while the UN stated they measured 105 degrees, but in this case, a completely different building would have to be in the background. So when you, yeah, and that's basically it. So you can go down and get the same image they where they shot their video. And so you look here, shadow, sunlight, and get that angle. And yeah, it's no idea how they got it wrong. So this would be the building.
This is quite a consensus. I mean, it's not like no one is contesting today that the UN got this angle wrong. It's just very unclear what happened there, how they did it, and what was the thinking behind it. When I saw it, it was very, very surprising, very weird. It's very obvious this is a wrong trajectory that the UN reported.
All right, Saar, so explain your role here. You published this study at your outlet Root Claim. You're an entrepreneur. You've made some money in tech, and so you put up some money, as I understand it, for people to challenge the findings here. Is that correct?
Yeah. So this project I founded called Root Claim. This is a gift to humanity. It's not really a tech company. I don't think it has a valid business model. Maybe one day, but not at this point. It's basically a method to help humanity better understand contentious subjects like this. These guys notified me that they're working on this analysis a few months ago, and they already had some amazing findings. I myself just helped a bit. I was not as involved as these guys, but by far this is the most impressive open source investigation I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure it's the best ever done. Very impressive results, very clear results, very hard to disagree with once you understand what they did. So basically what we did with Claim, we take evidence. We don't investigate ourselves. We don't bring evidence of our own. We take the evidence and we put it into a probabilistic model that we developed that basically allows you to assess which hypothesis is most likely given the evidence. This is something that the human brain is very bad at, and this is why we have all these people constantly disagreeing on matters of fact. But there are pretty good mathematical models to handle uncertainty, to handle complexity, and that's basically what we do. We developed a methodology to to use that. So we already analyzed this attack, I think, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. At the time, we gave it an 87% probability that this was the opposition. There was already enough evidence back then to believe the opposition is the likely culprit. And the new evidence basically brings us to 96%. And just to understand what that means, we have never been wrong on a hypothesis that got above 50%. So 96% is a pretty high confidence they got it right. So yeah. So another thing we did, what you asked about, is a challenge. So a way for us to publicize the superiority of this method. So we are very confident this method is superior to any human being, any investigative committee, judge, journalist, intelligence agency. We're pretty confident this is superior to any human reasoning process. And what we did is we offer a $100,000 challenge. It's a debate challenge. So anyone who thinks that they can reason better, that they can convince expert, unbiased judges that a conclusion of ours is wrong, we will bet $100,000 on that. The amount is flexible. That's not important. We're willing to do if it's someone important. We're willing to do it for $0, just for the sake of it, to get to promote rational thinking, to promote our method. Our only goal is to get humanity to think better and to understand the world better.
All right. So who wants to talk to me about the field? Because part of your study argues that the rockets, the sarin-filled rockets that were fired at Ghouta were actually fired from at least one of the launches was done from a field that was in insurgent-controlled territory. Your study matches this field at the intersection of 7 trajectories calculated from images of the impact sites where the rockets landed. And there also is a video that is widely thought to be authentic, showing Syrian insurgents around that time launching rockets from a field and wearing gas masks. So who wants to talk about this critical piece of evidence and what it means?
I can try. Yeah. Are you?
Well, I think that maybe I can do that well enough. Now, first, Michael was the first one to point my attention to the fact that this video. Okay, some noise. Sorry. This video that was released in 2013. It was ostensibly found on the bodies of jihadists killed near the Turkish border by Kurdish Peshmerga forces. A lot of people don't buy that. I don't think any of us buys that story. We don't know where the video came from, and in fact, it's widely disputed. But also, people have always wondered if it might be valid. Michael drew my attention in March to the fact that the scene in this video has enough detail: a couple of rows of trees, a concrete platform, and just basically the proportion of those features. It's not super detailed, but it does conform completely with this spot that we found very near the intersection of our trajectories. As if our trajectories were not 100% exact, this might be the exact spot. And it just matches the video in every feature, including, most importantly to me anyway, the corner of the field that gets scorched is apparent on satellite imagery. This certain corner of the field is blackened, and that's the same spot in the field where the launcher is. The scale of the burning is the same size as the flash of the rocket ignitions you see. And briefly, what the video shows is the rockets fired are the same volcano rockets, the same model that were used. And if the field proportions are understood correctly, because we had to do it at nighttime, there's no actual northeast, west, south, you can't tell for sure. But everything proportionally would say it's being fired in the same direction, towards the southeast, towards the impact points. And it was just basically the attack recorded on video, apparently.
And the group is called Liwa al-Islam.
The people firing, I believe they claim to be Liwa al-Islam, but they actually mess up the name a little bit, and they kind of display their flags a little too conspicuously. It's almost like Liwa al-Islam or friends of theirs impersonating somebody, poorly impersonating them. There's a little bit of a psyop angle apparently, to the video and the way they made it. I guess for deniability purposes. The whole Eastern Ghouta area broadly was controlled primarily by Liwa al-Islam. The actual area in question in Jobar is, as far as I know personally, it's a little more debatable just who was in charge there. But it was, opposition people, Liwa al-Islam, al-Nusra Front, or allies of theirs. Not, the Syrian army could have no access. We know that.
And they're wearing gas masks.
They are, is, protection against chemicals. They don't wear gloves. It's almost as if, I'm not sure what they were thinking, what the purpose is. It could have provided some protection in case there was a leak of chemicals. And it does kind of suggest that they're working with chemicals. It's not normal to be wearing gas masks. And also it's not normal to call your operation Operation Re-Sarar, which is the same phrase used for an earlier jihadist video where they took 2 rabbits in a cage and gassed them with some toxic gas till they were dead, and they called it the Re-Sarar, or a destructive wind chemical battalion, and promised that they were coming for the Alawites of Syria.
This video was found on captured rebel fighters near Turkey. Is that correct?
That's what was posted as the explanation for the video when it was just appeared out of nowhere on the internet. My own suspicion is it was leaked by the people who controlled it, which would be, presumably Liwa al-Islam, for somewhat unclear purposes.
Now, people might look at this video and say this could all be staged. That this could be even the Syrian government staging this video to make it look as if insurgents are responsible for launching the rockets at Ghouta.
That is, a valid enough thought. I never believed that, but realizing people could think that, I always just saw these videos as ambiguous evidence that wasn't going to be very good at convincing anybody. But what we have now is that this video was filmed in a field, either in this field that we've identified or one exactly like it, which means that it's outside of the lines of government control to a comfortable degree to where the army couldn't possibly get there to fake it.
Maybe I'll weigh in on this a bit. So this video was a crucial part of our old analysis from 4 or 5 years ago. When it came out, it was widely ignored. It didn't make it into the media at all. People simply said, "This is staged. This is a fake. We'll ignore it, and that's it," which is very rare. I mean, in my business, where we constantly investigate all kinds of contentions and whodunit mysteries and murder mysteries, a video of the murderer is something that's considered the holy grail. So you don't just dismiss it when it happens. What we did in our old analysis is compare it to other stage videos, stage evidence, and found a few things. First of all, staging a video is pretty rare. What you usually do is you take a video from another event and maybe claim it's from where you want it to be, or maybe change the soundtrack or cut it in a way that's misleading. Staging, I mean, getting a director and actors to reenact an event is extremely rare. It does happen. It is extremely rare. That's as the starting point. But another thing is when it does happen, it's very hard to do it without messing up something. You always, I mean, a video is tens of thousands of images, each one with millions of pixels. It's very hard to make sure everything is perfect and you don't mess up something. And these guys did not mess up, even though some people claimed, but this claim was simply wrong. We couldn't find any of those claims to be accurate. So it's very hard to not mess it up. And another thing that's very important is when you stage a video, you make sure that the message comes across. Okay, if you want to show a sniper shooting a child, which is one of the stage videos we analyzed, the child is in the frame, you see the shot, you see the dust, you see everything, it's very clear what's going on. This video, if you don't understand what's the context, it's unclear what it is. It's, first of all, it's very grainy, dark. They don't actually say chemical attack or sarin at any point. They say Saar, which is the name of this past chemical event, chemical trial they did, and they actually don't even say who they're attacking. They pretend to be attacking the Syrian army. So this whole thing does not, if you don't understand the context, if you don't know to match the rockets to the rockets found in the field, if you don't know what Saar is, if you don't do what these guys do and actually find where this field is, you don't know what it is. It's like, it would be the worst fabrication ever. So we already gave this a pretty high confidence 5 years ago. And now that these guys found that it actually matches the location, the exact location where the 7 trajectories intersect, that can't be a coincidence. That's very clear evidence that this video is authentic. It was taken on the night of August 21st, and it shows opposition fighters launching chemical rockets towards Zamalka, the neighborhood in Ghouta.
They claim it was taken. They claim it was taken on the night of August 21st, but there's no way to actually verify that it was taken that night, right?
Not until now. Not until they actually show that it matches the field. It matches the pattern of the shooting. It matches the actual everything matches. You could say that this was staged 2 weeks later, and they were shooting rockets while the UN investigators were in the field investigating the event. They were shooting someone was staging the event and shooting new rockets at the UN investigators. That's a possibility, but it's a very low probability possibility, and that's why we give a high probability that this being an opposition attack. It's not 100%, it's 96%.
Michael, anything you want to add here?
No, but I think what Saar just said is very crucial in this point, because to stage that event, we know that the Syrian army had no access to that area until 24th of August. We have a video of a tank, the only one video that shows that point at all, and the tank that is slowly driving toward there and aiming at that point. But there's no hint the Syrian army had any access to that area before August 24. And in the days later on, the Syrian army was actually attacked there a few hundred meters away from that point with sarin gas. And yeah, as Saar just said, at a later point, the UN inspectors were there, and the whole world looked at Ghouta and at this kind of weapon. And at that time, to shoot the same type of rocket in the same area would be a catastrophe for Assad, I think. Even if it was a high explosive.
Right. Well, sure. I mean, that's one of many reasons why the official story never made sense. You have Assad has just invited UN weapons inspectors into Syria. They're on the ground for the first time because the Assad government wants them to investigate a alleged chemical attack that the Syrian government was blaming on the insurgents. And of course, Obama had laid down the red line. As one former U.S. ambassador to the Middle East told Charles Glass in an article in Harper's Magazine, that the red line was basically an invitation to a false flag, because if you're the insurgents and you want U.S. military intervention against Assad to help you win, then when Obama lays down the one condition that would bring him into that military intervention, then of course you're incentivized to carry that out, to carry out a false flag. So the official story never made sense from there. And then we had, of course, the reporting of Seymour Hersh showing that U.S. intelligence had collected a lot of evidence that, in fact, it was the insurgents, which brings us now up to your study. I want to go back to the issue of the rocket range, because as I understand it, even Ake Selstrom, who was the head of the UN mission investigating the Ghouta attack, even he accepted publicly at a press conference, I believe, the range of around 2 to 3 kilometers from Ted Postal. Is that right?
Their own experts. So they trusted. They did not trust Postal, but they had their own experts, and obviously they came to the same conclusion.
Well, I'd like to add is from what I followed, it wasn't Postal, but rather Richard Lloyd, who he was working with, had been working on the calculations for a period of time. And I believe that was what was referenced. It was Lloyd's calculations had made the news. Somebody asked Solstrom about that, and he said basically, yeah, 2 kilometers sounds like a fair guess.
We have seen, probably like you have seen others, performing whatever studies on these rockets. And we have consulted with experts. And if you simulate the flight path, it seemed not to meet, as we may be indicated from the report, or you may draw the conclusion from the report. 2 kilometers could be a fair guess, I would assume. But it all depends. You have to sort of set some parameters which we do not know. We do not know to the extent they were filled or what they were filled with. We don't know their weight or whatever. But 2 kilometers could be a fair guess.
As far as I know, that's as close as we have to an official recognition of the point, but it's pretty close.
And can you explain how if the Syrian government was guilty, it would have to be a much longer range than that?
Yeah. So
it wouldn't have to be necessarily a longer range. There are some government-held positions fairly close. In fact, the firing spot we find is quite close to the front lines, as if whoever was firing from so close to the front lines might have been hoping that it could be read as coming from behind the lines by the other side. But the point was mainly that they all cross in fact, the range basically puts the government-held area completely out of range. And furthermore, the crossover of the trajectories is well shy of that line.
So I'm going to pull up a Twitter thread that you guys put out at Root Claim, just going through some of your key findings, which might help it easier for those of us to understand who are not so well versed in the technicalities. So let's start here. Following nearly a year of research, an independent open source investigation reached a conclusion that corroborates Root Claim's findings, your findings of a few years prior, by uncovering incontrovertible evidence implicating an opposition faction in the Ghouta attack. So let's start here. The investigation began by examining the many videos of rocket impact sites that were uploaded following the attack. Each video was examined for clues pointing to its exact location and the trajectory of the incoming rocket. For example, in this video, the chemical rocket penetrated a wall on a roof and continued to the floor below. Several landmarks in the background can be matched to satellite photos, identifying the exact location. And you put the coordinates there. Who wants to talk about this?
Sure. So basically, that's a very interesting location. So this video was known from day one. It's not a new finding. All the evidence here was known for a long time. Just understanding what it shows is the new findings. So there was a video where the UN was visiting this location of an impact site on the roof, and you see actually the rocket hit 2 points, one in the wall and one in the floor. And by connecting these 2 points, you can actually have a pretty good trajectory of where the rocket came from. Now, first of all, you need to know where this location is, and that's a pretty hard task. There always could be some minarets or another building or some landmarks in the background, and then you need to try to find from all of Damascus where is the place that matches all these landmarks. And this is something, I don't know which of you did it, but the one who did it that's a very impressive work. They actually managed to find the exact location of this roof. That was it's very impressive. And then when you have the location and you have the 2 impact points that give you a line, you can have the full trajectory. So if you scroll down, you can actually see how this looks. So here you see the roof, the wall on the roof from which the rocket penetrated. And if you go, and in the background, you see all the colored lines. That basically shows you which landmark matches the satellite photo that's above it. Okay, so the yellow corner is the yellow corner in the image and so forth. Okay, so that's the geolocation. That gives you the exact location on the map. And then what you see on the left is a composite image of several shots from the video that shows you can see the big hole in the wall, and then the impact hole in the ground in the roof. So that gives you the 2 locations that were merge into a line, and that basically gives you possible trajectories of the rocket. Here you can see the black rectangle is this building, and these are the possible incoming directions. So the rocket needs to hit the wall and then penetrate the floor and go to the floor below. Okay, so
and is this how you calculated that the UN/Bellingcat figures for the angle were wrong?
So that's a different location. There was never any trajectory or geolocation given for this site until these guys found it.
I see. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, but interesting anyway, because you see that if the rocket hit the west wall, then you can exclude every angle smaller than 154 degrees. And so you can exclude some points that were discussed earlier as launch spots, like Tome checkpoint is not included in this angle or not possible anymore.
That's exactly what you can see in the next.
So because this hits the west wall, then this means you can rule out launch points that were identified as Syrian government launch or possible Syrian government launch points.
Exactly.
So it's best to see it on the map on the next page. You can see exactly what it gives you.
All right.
It's what that is actually the way it hit the west wall just exclusively without hitting that northwest corner either.
Yeah. All right. So the tweet says, so you guys write, this alone disproves the prevailing hypothesis for government involvement proposed by Bellingcat, which suggests a launch area in yellow within the green area of government control. This is impossible as a rocket shot from the north could not have penetrated the western wall.
Exactly, yeah.
So maybe it's important here to take a look back at the developing story for government involvement. So originally, the first claim was what was made by Human Rights Watch and made the headlines of New York Times, basically saying that the UN gave two trajectories, one from the wall, which was wrong, and another from completely different from the western location, which is also wrong. And they intersect in an army base, and voila, you have forensic evidence proving this is the Syrian army. Very quickly after that, everyone realized the rockets cannot go that far. That was about a 9-kilometer range, and everyone who knows ballistics realized, or aerodynamics realized, this is a very non-aerodynamic rocket. It cannot travel this far. And then we got the more accurate estimates of 2 and possibly 2.5 kilometers max. So that killed the first hypothesis. And then we have this new hypothesis, which Bellingcat gave, which shows you, this is very interesting. So you see the red circles. Each red circle is a 2-kilometer radius around an impact site. Okay, so basically the launch locations should be at the intersection of the red circles, maybe a bit below, if a bit behind it, if it's a bit more than 2 kilometers. But you see that this most of the green area is not within the intersection of the red circles, which means that most of the government control area could not have been the launch source. And Bellingcat proposed that in this yellow rectangle you have I forgot which, I think was the Syrian Air Force Intelligence base, right? Air Force
Intelligence.
Yeah, okay. So they have the Air Force Intelligence base there, and he proposed that they went outside this base in night, went a few hundred meters to the south, downwards, and they then got within range and shot and launched into Zamalka. Now, what happens with this new evidence is basically kills completely this hypothesis, because this blue line you see diagonally, that's the
one here.
Yes, exactly. So this is basically the western wall that we talked about, with a bit of an angle to the left, to the west. Basically, you cannot launch the rockets east of this line and penetrate the western wall. Just impossible, because you need to bypass the northern wall. So
coming from here.
So if you're coming from here or from the yellow rectangle, anything that's to the right, to the east of the blue line, cannot penetrate the western wall without penetrating the northern wall. So this site alone basically invalidates the current hypothesis for a government attack. I'm sure people can come up with a new one given the new evidence, but that itself is very important.
Okay. Should we go on to the next tweet?
Yeah, so this one we examined already. So this is basically this rocket that just the rocket motor just lodged into the ground. The UN report that it doesn't show any bending signs, so it is roughly pointing at its source. And at the next image, you can see basically what they did. So they built a 3D model of the area, and they matched it to the buildings. And they looked for a video shot where the cameraman is exactly behind the rocket. And then they looked to see which buildings are in the background, and they could give you a pretty accurate trajectory. And that gives you another trajectory. The location of this spot is known for a long time. It was geolocated within days of the videos coming out. So the location was known. The UN reported this weird trajectory, which I don't understand how they did. And now these guys brought us this accurate trajectory.
Does it look to you like, you mentioned this before, but I just want to stress this. Does it look to you as if basically whoever wrote the UN study and trying to come up with the angle of the rocket was basically trying to pin it on the Syrian government?
The evidence... The evidence definitely matches that hypothesis, but it's possible that there is another hypothesis that also matches the evidence. So I will not make this claim confidently.
So it could just be a careless mistake?
I cannot see how it's a careless mistake, but maybe it's just my lack of imagination, and maybe there is a good explanation. And if the UN does an investigation of how this happened, maybe they will bring a good explanation. I don't know. But an investigation needs to happen. This is some serious... mess up.
So you can't see how it was a careless mistake, but you're not going to rule out the possibility that it was a careless mistake based on evidence that you have not seen yet.
Exactly.
Fair enough. You're very fair. You're very fair. All right. And I appreciate that. Okay. Anybody else want to comment on this image? Michael, I believe you showed us this image before, right?
Yeah. I showed the model. Yeah. I like to add one interesting point. I don't know if it comes here. Al Jazeera made a documentary about Ghouta, and they actually had Syrian forensic engineers on the ground at 2 points, formerly unknown points, who measured with a compass, old style, the angle they found from the trajectories on the site. Chris found one of these points, basically a swimming pool, and
Chris is someone else. Chris is someone else.
Yeah, he's not with us today, but he made a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Chris Kobos, however you pronounce his name, I don't know. He's indispensable in geolocating things.
We lost Michael.
Yeah.
He'll come back.
I bet he will. Oh yeah, he was the one talking about what Chris did.
Yeah. The documentary, I stopped. They measured using a compass. And these compass readings from the Syrian forensics exactly match our trajectories and even intersect at the same point, close, 50 meters away. One of the lines even touch the spot, the Liwa al-Islam video spot. And so there's corroboration of the trajectory and even the range. So it was pretty difficult to find another spot that would match in somehow in that what would I say, in the same way.
Right. Okay. Should we go back to the thread? You note that as you talked about, the UN misreported this angle by 30 degrees and then misreported yet another trajectory. both of which conveniently intersected at a Syrian army base, today known to be out of rocket range. Even the New York Times was convinced. But by the way, the New York Times actually revised their claims after the study by Postal and Professor Wright. Is that correct?
Lloyd.
Lloyd. So yeah, Lloyd. Yes, for Lloyd. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. They actually, I think they had an article co-authored with Richard Lloyd that changed this claim. I think they then moved to rely mostly on the chemicals, on the composition of the sarin, claiming it points heavily into the Syrian army sources. We can talk about that later, but I think all of these weak evidence are now irrelevant now that we have clear evidence with it.
Yeah, here in the image you see the Al Jazeera compass readings, the bright blue lines and the dark blue line, and they cross exactly at the same point. So it's not just we did some or tried to find an angle; they did it also. Yeah, and it went missing, I would say, nicely, because they tried to make a sense of the UN angle and their own measurements, and we are completely confused, including the wrong range they had. And in the end, they came up with 2 launch sites on the mountain, 5 or 6 kilometers away. So it was more confused than before. But basically, all starts with the UN angle, So they had the right angles here as measurements and completely missed what it means.
And what it means is that the trajectory shows that the rockets only could have been fired from a very distinct number of locations. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
What happened with the Al Jazeera angles briefly is that they gave us the trajectories, the angles, but they never showed on the map where those trajectories come from. So you can never really just place it on a map and make sense like this until we located the pool site exactly. And the other one, we actually don't know really exactly where that is, other than taking a couple of reported locations that we haven't located yet and finding that it correlates with one of those pretty well.
Okay, so if I have this right, we were told of where the rockets landed, but there wasn't the kind of proper analysis done of where they could have come from.
There's 2 different levels. Some people had reported impact locations without visual, just on a map. They landed here and here, and then separately, Al Jazeera gave us 2 angles without showing on a map what they lined up with. So we had taking the 2 and correlating them. We were able to get this.
Okay, so here in this map here, you say that the trajectories all converge on a small area in opposition territory within the around 2 kilometer range from the impact site. So basically, you've traced the launch sites to this very narrow set of locations here. And are these the impact sites at the bottom, or are these the impact sites up here?
Yeah, no, it's the narrow end of the triangles to the southeast is where they landed. And the reason that the triangles get wider at the other end is because of our imprecise, we don't know the exact angle. So it could have come from this or this or this angle. Each one has a wedge of possible angles included in that triangle. And in fact, the Al Jazeera ones, as Michael said, are the red, the dark blue and the bright blue lines added that don't have triangles. And the red one is very important. That's the impact site 4, the unbent tube in the wall that gives the best reading of all. And that's the one that really helped narrow down, because the firing spot has to be where they all intersect. So some of those are quite broad, but the red one is quite narrow. And that really puts a tight leash on the crossover area and that's what makes it a narrow, precise area.
And is your field the field that you located as being possibly in that video, and where would you speculate was the launch site? Is your field inside this range here?
It's right there. Yeah, it's right there. It's
right at the end of the purple triangle inside the red. right on the light blue line, pretty much. One of the light blue lines. There's two of them because I forget why there's two.
All right, so purple and blue.
Oh, yeah, magenta. The magenta, we're right past where magenta ends, inside red, and
Around
yeah,
here?
it gets hard to see the colors once they all cross over. It gets a rainbow
Yeah.
effect.
But
you
the
can.
point is your field is there.
So
Yes.
I have to share.
Do it.
Share screen.
You want to share something?
Yeah, I try. Select screen.
And thank you, Michael, for being able to share things. That's been helpful.
All
So
right, let's put this up. Here we go. Yeah.
Looks a little bit big. So this is basically how it started. We had some trajectories, and Adam, we chatted about or tweeted about the Leave Al-Islam video, and I basically said, oh, if this video would be authentic, then we have only two spots where it came from, because we have all other places are buildings or narrow or behind big buildings. So we have basically here a parking lot for buses on the government side, and we have here such small green area with enough space on the opposition side. And right here is that field, what we matched as a launch spot with the Leave Al-Islam videos. And to see that 110 degrees measured by Al Jazeera forensics exactly cross over this field, and also the UN rocket in the real angle is also here. Yeah, and they are all come together here. So yeah, there's little doubt. Here's a field. This is a field.
Mhm.
Exactly here was a launcher.
Yeah, can we get some? I'd like to. I hope that the final program will have some more images of the field and the modeling and the lineup and that scorched corner. That's some good stuff.
Yes, you guys can send me that, and we can add it.
There's some
and-
stuff in the tweet thread.
Yeah, so here we go. Back to the let me pull the thread back up, Michael, if that's okay. If you unless you want to show us anything, anything more, Michael, what you have.
No,
there.
it's okay. Do it. So I have to stop it. Okay.
Okay, let's go. Let's put this back up. All right, so now we're back on the tweet thread. Right in the middle of the identified area is this small field with enough space from which to launch rockets, whose importance will soon become evident. So yeah, as you guys were talking about, the field is in that area that you've identified as being the source of the rockets.
Yeah, let me add a sentence to what I said before.
Yeah,
I said to Adam, if this video is authentic, then in one of these two areas, there's no other possibility. And then we looked and said, oh, it looks pretty much like that. And this is how it started. And we found more and more clues that actually it is the side of that dark video, or the three dark videos. In the end, everything matched perfectly. So we wouldn't have found it without the trajectories and the range. Yeah, practically impossible.
Got it. Okay. And the thread goes on. In 2013, a video surfaced reportedly found on the bodies of Syrian terrorists. It shows Islamist fighters in gas masks launching rockets, identifying as Leave Al-Islam, the dominant opposition faction in Ghouta, and announcing the date as August 21st. Oh, so actually on the video, they say the date inside the video. That wasn't clear to me before. Maybe I missed that. So they actually say the date in the video?
Yeah.
It's disputed. People could say they gave the wrong date. Now we can show, it lines up with the rockets that were seen the next day.
Yeah. Okay. So just going down a little bit, the videos perfectly match that same field where all the rocket trajectories intersect. For example, fire from the rocket illuminates the area, exposing details such as trees in the background, a field with low vegetation, and a paved platform where the cameraman stands.
None of those are terribly impressive details in themselves, but just it's the matter of the way they correlate in a consistent way, and then is populated with a rocket launcher at the same corner, launching rockets in the same direction. It all comes together amazingly well.
Right. Saar, you want to comment here?
Yes. So basically, what we did here, we tried to look at random locations around Damascus and see how strong the fit is. We couldn't find another field which is similar to that. It's not only about having all these features, it's about their alignment and relative position. And also, one thing that people always forget is there's no negative evidence. Okay, so maybe if we look at another field, then maybe some big electricity pole there, or maybe there's a tree somewhere that could not have been missed in the video. So all of these together make this match pretty remarkable. It's not a likely coincidence.
And you guys made a model of this field in 3D.
Yeah.
A few of them.
A few of them, yeah. Now, normally when people see 3D in models that are used to accuse Syria of being guilty of attacks, people find that very convincing. I'm thinking about Duma, the story I've been covering, the case of the OPCW whistleblowers, where the New York Times, Forensic Architecture, they put out 3D videos, and everyone automatically, or people who want to believe that Syria was guilty, found those 3D videos very convincing.
Well,
yes, at the end of the day, you need to actually examine the evidence, the hard evidence. Anything can be presented nicely to be convincing. But you need to. Yeah, that's a sad fact about the world. There's nobody that could be trusted. That's why I founded RootClaim. The idea is to have at least one place that is unbiased and gives you quality analysis. By the way, we have no dog in this race. We don't care about the politics of it. I'm sure there are analysis we did that your viewers might not like, that don't align with their political view, but we're completely out of this political game. We only do hard evidence analysis using mathematical models.
All right. So is there anything that we haven't gotten to yet that you think it's important for people to know about your study here and how you came to your conclusions?
Quite possibly, but I'm not thinking of it.
We talked about the range of the rockets. We talked about the trajectories. We talked about the video, and we talked about you identifying this field where you say the rockets were likely fired from. So anything that we've missed so far, possibly, from your study?
I think it is interesting to note that 3 days later, when the Syrian army approached this launch location from the east, they were attacked by a sarin IED. Okay, so that's something that appears in the UN report, and the UN independently verified that attack by taking blood samples from the infected soldiers. So this is actually an interesting event. Again, no one in Western media is aware that this happened, that there was a sarin attack against Syrian soldiers. But it's very interesting. Now it's very interesting to see the location. So it's actually within 200 meters from the launch location. When Syrian soldiers were approaching the location, they were attacked by IEDs. And also there's another interesting video that shows an opposition chemical lab or chemical storage underground, in which you actually see the same IEDs that were later reported by the Syrian army to be used against their soldiers. So a lot of interesting coincidences come together around this location.
And that warehouse was in the immediate vicinity. It's not just randomly in Damascus. It's the one they found right afterwards. They went to find where the cylinders came from, and that's where it was a workshop right there. It's maybe like 300 or 400 meters from the launch spot we've identified. They had a workshop with sarin-filled shells and other weapons, and atropine and gas masks, things that people would have on hand if they were handling sarin. And then they were launching sarin at Syrian troops right there in that area. So I think it's fair to say the opposition in that area had sarin and they were firing sarin rockets from there too.
Yeah, I don't think anyone in the U.S. media, as far as I know, has reported that Syrian government troops came under attack by a sarin attack just days after the Ghouta incident.
Yeah, it was in a United Nations report, and it got very obviously very little Western mainstream media notice. In fact, just noticing the GPPI, Global Public Policy Initiative, I believe, has put out a new report, and they've got their giant list of 300 and some chemical attacks, almost entirely by the Syrian government. And that attack is completely excluded from their list, as well as one in the area 2 days before on the 22nd, and one down in Daraya area on the 25th. None of those 3 attacks on Syrian troops is even listed on their list at all.
Of course not, because GPPI, whatever it's called, is a state-funded think tank, so-called.
But luckily, the state is Canada, so that barely counts, right?
Well, the German government too. I mean, it's in Germany.
Oh, Canada was the new one.
Yeah, but look, they're all partners in the Syria dirty war. They're all, it's all part of the same coalition, and I'm sure I understand that to make research look more neutral and independent, they farm out certain tasks to different governments, and Canada got tapped on the shoulder for this one. But I mean, look, this is this is why the OPCW whistleblower story is so important, because it exposed that the world's top chemical weapons inspectors, the first OPCW team to get on the ground to first investigate one of these hundreds of alleged chemical attacks by Syria, actually found no evidence of a Syrian government attack. And of course, we all know what happened. Their evidence got doctored and censored. And your study, using only open source evidence, nothing secret, just using open source evidence, has provided a whole new set of findings here for people to think about as we evaluate the merits of these claims against the Syrian government and how important these claims are to, the narratives used to sustain the whole Syria war and the ongoing sanctions on Syria. So it's really important what you guys have done. I'm going to let you guys all make some final comments for us to think about as we wrap, and how people should think about your study, how they can go and read it, and anything else you want to impart to people who will be looking at your findings. Saar, go ahead.
Oh, Saar?
Yeah, sure. I was on mute. So I think the evidence is very clear here. We've been trying to distribute it, to make it known to as many people as possible. It's a very hard task. We had similar problems with other analysis we did. For example, we found the evidence for vitamin D being very effective against COVID. We found this to be very, very likely. Very hard to get
vitamin D.
Vitamin D, yeah. Okay. So vitamin D, we can talk about that a lot if you want.
I'm good.
Vitamin D deficiency.
This study's enough for me. Yeah.
Vitamin D deficiency is pretty important for COVID severe outcomes. We had a lot of work with health institutions to get this approved and realized. Very hard to do. So this is a problem with all our institutions. Very hard to find institutions where they're well aligned with public interest. They don't have severe biases, funding problems, government interference. Very hard to very, very big problem. And so same here. You have an amazing finding, very clear evidence that something that is considered a conspiracy theory in the West is correct, and the opposition is behind this chemical attack and probably behind others. This brought us closer to a war between the US and Russia at some point, and it may happen again. And this is very important that the world knows how to assess the situations correctly without bias. And it's not happening, and it's very dangerous to all of us.
Yeah. Well, look, to me, the conspiracy theory here is the official story, because the idea that the Syrian government would knowingly do the one thing that it knows would invite U.S. military intervention, that it would bomb civilians with a chemical attack, not the insurgents that have been routing it across the country. Al Qaeda captured Idlib, and there was no chemical weapons used against Al Qaeda there, which is an amazing coincidence. So the official story to me is the conspiracy theory, because it's just so implausible the Syrian government would ever actually do the one thing that would invite U.S. military intervention, while of course giving it no military advantage whatsoever, except setting it back militarily, as a U.S. military attack would do.
I would say that doesn't so much lend itself to being a conspiracy theory as being just an extremely theory about an extremely illogical conspiracy. We could say that this is both sides are theorizing about a conspiracy by somebody to launch this attack, and the one in which it's the opposition side doing has always made a lot more sense, and it also is supported by the forensic evidence. So it's the superior conspiracy theory by far.
Fair enough. Michael, any final remarks?
Yeah, interesting for me is we wrote to Al Jazeera and Syrian archive and asked for additional evidence. We know it's there. Yeah, Syrian archive has impact points. We don't know, but they have the location. And Al Jazeera has also a location with another compass reading. So there's more evidence to support or even debunk our theory, but none of them would even breathe. No reaction from anywhere. It's dead silence all around. Yeah.
Well, look, on that front, Saar, do you want to reiterate your challenge to Bellingcat or anybody else who wants to dispute your findings? What challenge you put forth to them if they want to try to dispute the findings of the study?
Yeah, sure. So this is a challenge on all our conclusions, not only on the Ghouta attack. Basically, what we're offering is this. So we agree together on 2 judges who are expert in the field, and they publicly claim that they don't have any interest in any outcome, and they're willing to check and investigate both hypotheses fairly. So we need to agree on 2 people who can do that. And basically, each side puts in escrow $100,000. We do a long debate. It's about 8 hours for each side, so all the evidence is really understood. And after this debate, this presentation, the 2 judges say which hypothesis is most likely. If the 2 judges both say that one hypothesis is more likely, the one that supported that hypothesis gets the prize. Otherwise, if they disagree, it's split. So these are the rules, very simple, very hard. People always think there's some catch here. We're not going to be good for it. No, the money will be put in escrow before the debate. We will openly talk about who to use as judges. We will not bring our own judges. All of this needs to be publicly done. And if we try to whistle out and try to push irrational judges, it will be very open, and anyone can see that we are whistling out. So no catch here. This is for real. The reason no one is taking our challenges is because the people know the evidence does not support their hypothesis strongly enough.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you guys doing this study and joining me to discuss it. If people want to read it, it's available at rootclaim.com. Adam Larson, Michael Kobs, Saar Wilf, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.